This is a season of innovation and creativity. So many things are going to change this season, including the disruption of the political system. Now you say disruption is a bad thing, but not so fast. Every system is being disrupted right now. The financial system. You see, innovation has disrupted the old paradigm of how monetary policy used to work. Disruption leads to change. You know, a lot of people don't know anything in America about the Black community, about the African American community. It's true. They simply don't. Everybody listens to hip hop, but that's it. That's the only foray, insight given into a community of 50 million citizens in this country. You can tell that there's severe ignorance, even at the nation's top levels. You had Senator Turtleneck McConnell, Moscow Mitch. You had the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, say that Black Americans vote at the same rate as all other Americans. And then he had to come out and correct it because it sounded so bad that he was otherizing his own fellow citizens, saying that there's two distinct groups. There's Americans and then there's Black Americans. Now, if that happens at that high of a level, what about the mid-range, the mid-tier? And then you don't even have to ask about the lower range and lower tier. Because you see things like in Brunswick, Georgia, where Ahmaud Arbery is hunted down in broad daylight and cornered in, according to testimony, like a rat, and lynched just for being Black in America. So there's an extreme amount of prejudice that's steeped in ignorance. We never talk about this. You know, a lot of people don't like me. It's scary, it's voodoo. So they come up with all kinds of labels to try to pigeonhole us. But because we don't fit into any of these narrow-minded codes, it's pretty hard to do that. So I'm some kind of deranged, socialist, Marxist lunatic who's detrimental for the entire nation. This is a unique category and box that conservatives have created to house me. Now, I disagree with the lunatic part. The socialist and Marxist part is fairly accurate. And a lot of our suggestions would not cause any harm to America. The exact opposite is true. The nation would benefit tremendously. Goldman Sachs reported that $16 trillion are lost in this country over the course of this nation's history. $16 trillion have been lost as a result of racism in America. Now, I don't know how you can be a senator like Tim Scott and say America is not racist, but Goldman Sachs and Citigroup, they are steady stating that you've lost $16 trillion as a result of racism in America. You're telling me the people who keep and look over the finances are that wildly off an exaggeration? 16 trillion is not a little money. To put it in perspective, there's I think like 2 to 3 companies in America that are worth 1 trillion or a little bit over it. So 16 trillion is insane goo gobs of money that none of us will ever see in at least one transition. There's prejudice based off of steep ignorance. And people will say, well, their prejudice is based off of statistics, stories, and reports. It's interesting that a lot of those same people will say when something doesn't conform to their confirmation bias, say, oh, Donald Trump is a Nazi or a bad president. The fake news that gets tossed around. But then when it's something that comports and conforms to their worldview, the media and news is no longer fake. Black on black crime is a real thing, don't you know? The inner cities are so horribly mismanaged and there's gang violence everywhere, don't you know? The news no longer becomes fake when it's confirmation bias of their prejudice that's already present. That's interesting to think about. You know, the first thing that you have as a weapon against ignorance, if you're lucky to have it, is a platform to dispute disinformation and ignorance. It doesn't necessarily have to penetrate prejudice. It might not. But it definitely destroys ignorance. You know, MSNBC has one of the best weekend shows where you really get a deep delve analysis and insight into the black community in America. You seldom hear anything that's not negative from non-black media. And when you have voices who can break through, that's really insightful and powerful. You know, every Saturday, MSNBC has Tiffany Cross over the airways sharing authentic Black American culture, Black American perspective. And this is something that conservatives don't know how to deal with, because they generally argue in stereotypes, argue broad-based narratives based off of already latent prejudice and ignorance. But if you have a counter narrative that doesn't fit their narrow box that they place you in, then that's where their whole ideology runs into trouble. And nobody does this better than Tiffany Cross. You know, I was looking at the Harvard survey that comes out each election year. They do a survey of youth in America to gauge what they think about a range of issues. And they polled about mental health. And overwhelmingly, the young people think that America is experiencing a mental health crisis. And they're not wrong. They're absolutely correct. And then they asked about elections. And this was very interesting. 36% of all young people are planning to vote in 2022. Now, the highest during the midterm ever was in 2018 at 37%. So already in the beginning of May, we're near the highest level ever reached in a midterm for youth participation, which was 2018. I think you have a huge opportunity to educate, organize, and agitate all at once. You know, I think that Tiffany Cross and Angela Rye are the quintessential spokespeople for the plight and the future progress of Black America. And I think sometimes, oftentimes in America, if you're in a marginalized community, you don't get showcased. Now we know that there are tons and tons of historically Black colleges and universities all across America. And that's about all we know. We never hear from the students. We never see the campuses. We never hear the dialogue and discussion. It's like walled off to America. And what I'm proposing is you open it up. Because it's a crucial conversation that people need to hear, debate, and decide upon. decision 2022 is really important for the future of America. Too important not to hear all American voices, whether I agree or disagree. I believe that there should be debate. Don't let these demagogues fool you and say that I'm not for free speech. I'm for moderation. I understand that not everyone can comport themselves in a public square. I'm not going to be in a public square with those people who marched that night in Charlottesville. Blood and sword, and Jews shall not replace us. You saw what they did in Charlottesville. How there was violence when people who disagreed with them in the public square came and confronted them. Was there not violence? Am I totally imagining that Heather Hare was murdered in Charlottesville? Am I totally imagining what happened in Santa Cruz and in Berkeley, where there were street brawls between fascist conservatives and Black Lives Matter and Antifa? It's not like everybody came together in the public square and was singing Kumbaya. Let's be real. So I'm for debate in the public square. We need to hear different ideas and perspectives. We hear liberal and conservative all the time in America. We see and hear the white supremacy arguments as well. There's plenty of talk radio and conservatism that spews all of that shit. You get Ben Shapiro going to Liberty University. You get conservatives going to liberal arts colleges and speaking all the time. But what you don't get is a uniquely Black American perspective and discussion in this country. Tiffany Cross. Do crosstalk at HBCUs all across America. Bring Angela. Bring Nicole Hannah-Jones. Jamila Hill. Kendra G. Have entertainers like Lizzo, Alicia Keys, Beyonce. Have thought leaders like Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Gayle King. Have political candidates who are running like Stacey Abrams, Amelia Skies, Raphael Warnock, Gary Chambers Jr. And have the students present. Do you know how big this is? Student Government Association, SGA. To have a nationally syndicated media show up at your college or your university. To have a student town hall asking questions hearing speeches. Hell, just the food alone. This is going to open the discussion up to a large array of individuals who can't be present, but will be watching and listening to really hear a new perspective. I think that it would be great. You couldn't get to all of the HBCUs before the election. There's so many. Oh, you get the cheer squad. You get the mascots. You talk with Student Government Association. You can talk with freshmen, sophomore, juniors, seniors. What's going on in the community? You can have community activists. Showcase Black-owned businesses. This is groundbreaking. Because for once, America finally gets access to HBCUs. You know, our opponents on the conservative side would rather phone in bomb threats. So there's something they're scared of. We know that fear leads to hate. And the more inclined you are to have hatred, the more inclined you are to have fear. You know, it's like the story of Jackie Robinson. So many of the teammates, when he broke the race barrier in 1947, so many of his teammates were in fear that they were going to be harmed by Jackie. And Jackie was in fear that there's more them than it is him. And they would do great bodily harm to him. So both fears, both phobias led to distrust and dislike. But it wasn't until they started playing with Jackie Robinson, and it wasn't until nothing happened to them, that they started to disbelieve all the stories they had been told. Oh, they had so many stories that they were telling the players. Black men rape you. Black men will try to murder you. He'll assault you. There was so much fear. And there was no anecdotal stories to back up this fear. Because there had been no African Americans in baseball. They had their own league, the Negro League. So this fear came from prejudice and hatred. Some of these players' parents were telling them, don't play with Jackie. Quit the team. The fans would yell out all types of racial epithets. They would boo every time Jackie Robinson stepped on the field. They threw garbage at him. The opposing teams would yell racial slurs. They would try to assault him on the field. It all turned around in Philadelphia. There was a player on the opposing team. And the players on the field for his team were saying all types of mean things about Jackie Robinson. And one player out of the dugout ran out to the field and told Jackie Robinson, "Don't take it personally. We don't all feel this way. Now play ball." It was the city of brotherly love that showed Jackie Robinson the initial love that made him a great baseball Hall of Famer. Every team in Major League Baseball has retired Jackie Robinson's number 42. No player can ever be Jackie Robinson. This acts as a multiplier to inspire. Can you imagine? They all know that not just Tiffany is coming to their college or their university. Not just Angela. Not just Roland. For all you know, the vice president might come. The president might come. State and local lawmakers might show up. Business owners are going to want to know what the commotion is so they can make a dinero. You know what I mean? This is a boom. This is the biggest magnifying spotlight on a college or university that they could ever ask for. This puts the spotlight back on you. What are you doing to make a change? A lot of Gen Z kids are at HBCUs doing a lot of great things. And we would like to assist them and help them out. But we don't know. Look at Howard University, the Blackburn takeover. Those organizers made history, her story. Nobody had ever organized like that on a campus. We want to hear from the future leaders of this country. The future engineers, doctors, musicians, animators, cybersecurity experts, ambassadors, presidents, vice presidents. We want to hear. This presents a golden opportunity to hear voices who have been ostracized from the mainstream, to go to something that's uniquely black in America, You can't get much blacker than historically black colleges and universities. It's got black in the title. That's why I say that. I think a lot of Americans would benefit from hearing these discussions. Because oftentimes what I hear when people are talked about who aren't from communities who are marginalized and oppressed in this country, oftentimes I hear ignorance, generalizations based off of prejudice, and mindless insanity due to stubborn philosophical beliefs. If I had to summarize, it's not rooted in facts, because they don't have facts. They have their opinions. And you're entitled to your opinions, but you're not entitled to facts. So we can disprove all of this black on black crime by showing black people at black institutions of higher learning having civil and intelligent discussions about the direction that they want their nation to go in. You wouldn't say all of one group is criminal. But this is what conservatives say when they talk about the black community. Every time you hear Candace Owens, Brandon Tatum, are they talking about anything positive that's going on in the black community at historically black colleges? No. Every time you have Candace Owens come on Tucker Carlson, she mentions the black on black crime. George Floyd is no martyr. She defends everything. Black people are the most murderous group in America, according to Candace Owens. Democrats destroyed black America when they took the father out of the home. According to Candace Owens, a political party took a man out of a home. But the general overlay you get there is always negativity. Now you know that a coin has two sides. But you notice when you talk about black conservatives, there's never anything positive. Going on an HBCU Crosstalk America tour, we would visually see and hear the positivity. So they'd have to come out and dispute your lying eyes, your lying ears, and the internet that would have the video readily available. You can't gaslight truth. As much as conservatives try to con America, you can't gaslight truth if we have it readily available and easy to attain and view. That would be an epic summit if Crosstalk went all across America to different HBCUs and told youth, hey, it's an election year. You gotta admit or understand, a lot of youth don't even know that there's an election in November. Young people are not in politics like that. Right before the election, they go, oh, I remember. Somebody told me to vote. I don't know for who. This is a way to educate people and get them excited in a wholesome, friendly way. You got to get excited about politics if you want to participate and have representation. You can't be dredging the fact that you have to participate and then want other groups to take your participation seriously. But if that's the framework that is always presented into young people, it's no wonder that they're pessimistic. Politics is never presented as you in governance. What does Howard University want this November? What does Florida A&M want in November? What does Morehouse want in November? What does Spelman want in November? What does Tennessee State University want in November? Crosstalk is on the scene to find out. I can tell you a lot of youth at the HBCUs would love Tiffany Cross forever if she did this. They would love Angela Rye forever. They would love anybody that they tagged along forever. Because you have to understand, when you don't have any visibility, the smallest amount of visibility sends you skyrocketing. People think that this campus is worthy enough to come and visit and speak to us about what our concerns are. That never happens. Now I'm going to start paying attention. So you have a ripple effect. People that feel like they're forgotten and nobody speaks to are now being spoken to. So now they're going to wonder what's going on at the very least. And at the far end of the spectrum, they're not going to have any excuse anymore not to participate. There's a lot of HBCU students who don't vote, who aren't registered. We know this. There's a lot of non-HBCU college students who aren't registered and who don't vote. They don't feel like people speak to their concerns. You don't have to be in a certain age group to listen. You just have to have 2 ears and be willing to do so. November. Between now and November, this is the perfect time to organize, to build a real agenda, and to present that agenda to the country at large. You know, we hear from time to time at conferences about a black agenda. But we need to hear from the youth. We need to hear from women. We need to hear from the LGBTQ plus community. What their agenda is. And there's no place like HBCUs where you're going to hear a multitude of diverse perspectives. You're going to get conservative perspectives at HBCUs just to prepare all of you for this. It spans the gap. You can bring Kimberly Classic, Ebony K. Williams. Bring everybody. Because no community is a monolith. You can bring social media commentators. Reese Cooper. We like Reese. Amazing Lucas. You can bring people that haven't been engaged, but are engaging. You know, it's one thing when you haven't been engaged by the system, but you're engaging the system. This is something that's new, and that I think there's a complete and utter appetite for.